So just following off the back of that story, Freedom Day in the UK, are you looking on with envy from here?
Look, I don't think there's anywhere else you'd prefer to be over the past 18 months than Australia. Obviously, I feel for the people of the UK. They've had a very tough year, and so you can understand their joy at being let out, so to speak. But we've got to recognise that in the UK, there's been over 100 deaths in the last week. There's thousands of cases, tens of thousands of cases. And when you compare that to the hysteria over the 100 or so cases a day in Sydney, we are worlds apart at the moment from Australia to UK. And I think eventually we're going to have to catch up with the rest of the world, because the coronavirus will probably become endemic around the world. We can't stay closed off forever.
And so what? It comes down to the time frame then. I mean, we've spoken about this so many times over the course of the last 12 months, and the Prime Minister announced his 4-stage plan, but there's still no timing on it. So when do you see us potentially following that kind of model in the UK by saying, right, okay, vaccination is high enough now, we've got to go on?
Well, I don't, as I've said, I don't think we should be locking down like we are in Sydney and Melbourne. I think lockdowns cause deaths too, those type of incredibly restrictive laws really do put mental health, financial stress, marriage stress on people that are far beyond, I think, the risks that we now face, given that most older Australians have at least had one jab. Now, in terms of when we open up, well, we've got to get the vaccine, more broadly, with no restrictions. We've got to get the vaccine available to more people. We've got 1 million Pfizer turning up this week. Things will move quickly now, in my view, in terms of access to the vaccine. And once that's accessible, well, then it's up to people. Individuals can make their own choice. It's a free country. If you want protection, get the vaccine.
But you can't guarantee that there won't be lockdowns, even once we reach a certain level, because it's a call that's made by the state.
That's right. It is made by the states under our constitution. I do think, though, that the public sentiment is shifting, and that's what I suppose will be needed in a democracy, to get governments to change their positions on these issues. As I say, once we have the vaccine available for everybody, what would then be the rationale to lock down? Because people who want a protection against it can get that, keeping in mind that all the experts are saying that the vaccination is not going to stop the spread. And we can see that overseas in countries like the UK, especially with this Delta variant, that we will continue to have the spread of coronavirus. But the vaccine does greatly reduce the risk of hospitalisation, and should allow us then to treat this disease more like the others that are endemic in our community. It's
not going to change that mindset of fear that a great majority of the population has here, though, right?
That is a concern, Peter. I suppose what I'm trying to do, and others, is just try to bring perspective back into this. There is no option here. There is no policy decision that governments can take to remove all risk from your life. There are two certainties in life, taxes and death. Governments are responsible for one of those, and they're not going to remove taxes anytime soon. And unfortunately, we can't remove all the risk of death either. We're going to have to learn to live with a certain level of risk. You can thank the Chinese Communist Party for that risk, but it looks like coronavirus will be endemic to the world for all of our lives.
Okay, as you'd be aware, the New South Wales government has temporarily shut down the construction industry. It's a first so far when it comes to this. Would you be urging a rethink?
Well, look, I don't support the lockdown as a whole. I don't support the closing of florists, of gyms, of retail shops, all these businesses. People have, spent their lives building up these businesses, employing people, and they've been destroyed overnight. And yes, and construction as well. So much of the construction industry relies on cash flow. So this is going to have a massive ripple effect through to subcontractors, right through the supply chain, who don't get paid. I think we've lost all perspective here as a country. Yes, there have been some tragic deaths. Every death is tragic from the coronavirus, but we just don't get a handle. We don't get a measure on what are the mental health impacts. How many small businesses have been put out of business over the last 24 hours. We're focusing on too much on what we can measure, and we're measuring minutely the coronavirus cases, but not all these other impacts of the lockdowns
Yeah.
and the restrictions.
And because these lockdowns are going to continue now, though, there's an extra push to bring JobKeeper back or something similar. More money is going to be needed as more of these lockdowns take place. Are you open to a return of JobKeeper or a similar rate in its first stages?
Well, look, I think you've seen the government has always tailored its assistance to what's happened, including the government to stake up decisions we don't always support. We do have to be there to support people in these dire circumstances, and we've increased assistance both from the Melbourne lockdown a few months ago, the fourth lockdown, I think, the Sydney more severe one recently, and again now in Victoria as well. In terms of JobKeeper, I think it would have to be radically different. The rules around JobKeeper were very generous in its first iteration because we had to get the money out the door quickly. We can't subsidise every business in this country, and you can't, I think, just have a program which is based on reduction in turnover, because turnover reduces for a whole lot of reasons, some of which aren't at all to do with the pandemic. So we've just got to be careful here. We've got $1 trillion in debt now, and it was right to open up the coffers last year to support people. But we've just got to be a bit more sensible now and targeted to where these lockdowns are.
Just a quick one to finish off with, Senator. There's been a coordinated response overnight to a hack from China. So China has been named. It's quite a rare instance that this has taken place, actually, when it comes to a hack. So is that about time, and why has there been a reluctance to do it in the past?
Well, I don't know the answer to that last question. That's up to the authorities. I suppose there's always sensitivity about these types of things in diplomatic matters, but it's not surprising to anyone. I don't think. It's a bit like dog bites man, isn't it? It's not exactly a massively surprising story. We all know China's been doing this for years. They've hacked our parliament, they've hacked politicians' emails, and as this story outlines, they've hacked a lot of the intellectual property in corporate and business relationships across Western countries. That's allowed China to steal a lot of those technologies and eventually steal our jobs. And what I've been saying for the past, since the coronavirus, is we've got to put a stop to the stealing of our jobs, and we should be fighting back against this. If China's going to act like this, why shouldn't we ban Chinese products or put tariffs on them coming into our country so we can protect our own jobs, rather than let our industries be stolen by a country that is not playing by the rules?
Extra tariffs on, say, iron ore, for example.
Well, we send them the iron ore. I'm talking about the tariffs on steel, so we can have. So we're not a net importer of steel. We're a net importer of steel, despite being the world's largest iron ore exporter. It doesn't make sense.
Okay, Senator Matt Canavan, always good to chat. Talk to you soon.